Yes, it is a Football Friday here on Birds 365 after a game for the ages. Well, it might have been the prehistoric ages, but it was a game for the ages just the same. Last night's last preseason game of the year for the Birds, which means we look forward to opening week against the New England Patriots, not before we depict the Titanic tilt that was the Colts against the Eagles. John McMullen was right there, taking it all in, taking notes, deciding if this is going to be the difference between the Eagles making the Super Bowl and not making the Super Bowl. Moved at all last night by the affair at Lincoln Financial Field, Mr. McMullen?
No, not at all. I mean, you just have to go back to last year when the Eagles got waxed by the Dolphins in Miami. Doesn't matter. Just forget preseason week 3. Necessary evil. We got through it. The hurdle is through. And now you can get down to business as real Tuesday cut down day. But 48 players the Eagles did not play yesterday.
48, was that the total number?
I'm sorry, 42. 48 they did have. So basically they had a game day roster. Regular game day roster. A little bit more, but 42 guys, and obviously Indianapolis went in a different direction with a young quarterback. So, and by the way, he did not look good. I mean, he's playing against third and fourth stringers, a couple second teamers, but mostly third and fourth teamers, and he wasn't good. So, Shane Steichen's got a lot of work to do. The Eagles don't care about the preseason. I mean, it's evident they're 1-6-2 now in the Nick Sirianni era. And remember, this is a team that made the playoffs, won the NFC Championship, and a lot of people think has the best roster in football right now. And they're 1-6-2 in the preseason. Right. They don't care.
Yeah, they don't. And it was evidenced by the outcome of last night's game. And you wouldn't have known it. Yeah, Johnny, you were down there, so you probably didn't get to clue in much to the Amazon broadcast last night. Yeah, Herb Street and Al Michaels were talking up Anthony Richardson, a blue streak. And I get it. The kid's got a chance to become a star player somewhere down the road. But we're watching these passes go off receivers' hands, being deflected by Eagle D-backs, being overthrown. I'm going, are we watching the same game here? He made a couple of nice plays. He flashed.
Oh, yeah, you can see it.
You see it, but you know that it's woefully inconsistent. And I'm going, are we watching the same game? 6 of 17, really? And he's the savior of the franchise? Not tonight. You're deciding that off his physical traits, not what he's doing on the field right now. Come on.
No, he's a complete projection. Ironically, his best throw was a pass to Josh Downs that Downs dropped. You can see it. So every once in a while you see it. But yeah, the consistency obviously isn't there. And as soon as Gardner got in there, Gardner Minshew's their best quarterback. And he was sharp, and I think his passer rating was 135 against the backup. So that's what you want from a veteran guy. And to be honest, he's a better quarterback than Marcus Mariota. I've said that from pretty much day one, and I don't think it's not going to derail the Eagles' season or anything like that. But I think he should be the starter early in the season. And by the way, I don't even know if that's Shane Steichen's decision in that wacky organization. That's one of the problems when you get your first head coaching job. And Nick says how lucky he got. Well, typically you go to situations like Shane's in right now, or Jonathan Gannon's in Arizona, where it's a complete mess because the last guy was so bad you had to fire him. That's sort of what happens. Mm-hmm. Wasn't the case here. It was more injury related. You want to throw some COVID in there as well. And obviously things went off the rails with Carson Wentz, but the offensive line was in place. We talked about the defensive line was in place. Really good players, really foundational, good owner. Maybe a little bit scapegoatish, as I always say, when things don't go the way he wants, but better than, the vast majority of other owners in this league. So Nick came into a good situation. Shane's got his work cut out for him. That's not a good football team, especially without Jonathan Taylor. You know, and they played some Taylor Swift. I joked foreshadowing for the soon-to-be backfield in Philadelphia. That's a joke. Calm down, people. But he's not coming here. The Eagles, and people are going to talk about Devin Allen and Tyreek Maddox-Williams and Ben Van Sumeren. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They've been working since April. These guys aren't making the team because they flashed on a meaningless game on August, whatever. I don't have my phone because I can't find my phone.
Out of the group that you just mentioned there, the only one that I would not say 100% stop it, it's a meaningless game. What has Britton Covey done this summer that you say he's locked into the returner's job? I know Devin Allen was hurt too. Wasn't like Devin Allen's looked great all summer, but he did have a very good kickoff return last night. Actually caught a pass. Yeah, right. The guys, the kid from Timber Creek who showed up here 3 days ago, had a great game, nice play, interception. He got no chance.
Should have had two, by the way. Dropped an interception right to him from Anthony Richardson. Dropped that one.
Do you think he made the practice squad with that performance?
He might have made the practice squad. I mean, they need so much help at linebacker, and he showed some flashes. But Nick obviously got asked about him after the game, and he said, I believe it was the question was essentially, what was your message to Tyreek Maddox-Williams? And he said, hey, hello, my name's Coach Sirianni. That was because you just met the guy. And he went out there and he showed some ability, and they need help at that position. So, yeah, I think maybe he did open up some eyes for the practice squad. With Devin versus Britton Covey, first of all, they play different positions. Britton's the punt returner, not the kick returner. I don't think the door is shut. If Devin's a kick returner, he's not a punt returner. Those things are different. For some reason, people don't think they're different. They're very different. They're different roles. Some people can do both, but not many. You have to have punt returners, or it's like slot receivers versus outside receivers. Punt returners got to have that short area quickness, that quick birth, the ability to make the first guy miss. Kickoff returns about breaking that one tackle, having the long speed and going. I always say the best ever, as you know, Cordero Patterson. That's a kickoff returner. Break the tackle, boom, and you're off. And that's what. And Devin's, we know he can run. You don't make the Olympic hurdling team if you can't run. So, but we know the issues, the age. He hasn't played in 6 years. He was hurt. But about Britton, yeah, I don't have him as a lock anymore because he's been hurt.
Right.
And
somebody's got to be their quote unquote returner. I get what you're saying. Punt return is one thing, kickoff returner is another, but they're both returners. So they're tied together. They're not the same, but they're tied together. Swain, who they just picked up 10 minutes ago, did the punt returning last night. You don't think
if anybody is returning punts beside Britton Covey in New England, it would be Olamide Zaccheaus. And we'll see how much deference they pay to Britton Covey in a couple of days, because he has been out. Before he got hurt, I would have said 100%. Now I'm down to 90-ish. I still think he's going to be there, but because I don't think it's a serious injury and they're just being cautious. But if you're not on the field, can't make the club in the tub, Chip Kelly says.
Yep. All right, let me ask you about a couple of the 42 players that didn't play last night, and you're assuming that all 42 of those guys will be on the roster as of Tuesday, which means, Johnny Mac, for your contest, you only got to figure out 11 guys. You got 42 locked.
Well, there were a couple injury guys in there, but yeah, the vast majority, there's Mario Goodrich is a bubble player. He's got a groin injury. Kyron Johnson's a bubble player. He had an appendectomy. So they weren't deference players. Moro Ojomo is probably the most difficult because he's got a concussion. or, had a concussion. And he's a 7th round pick. So you have to weigh, can you get him through waivers and all that kind of stuff? The most interesting, they asked me this on the postgame show. That's what Kentavious Street.
That's where I was going next.
Yeah, I didn't see that coming. And I just don't, the numbers don't add up for me, but I'm going to do my 53 as soon as we get off the air this morning. Haven't done it yet. The numbers don't seem to add up to me. I mean, you have Fletcher Cox, Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, Marlon Tuipulotu, Milton Williams should be ahead of Marlon. That's 5 guys. You're going to keep 6 and a Jomo. You're going to keep 7 defensive tackles. I even now they're incredibly deep. They're all NFL players. He's an NFL player. I've been saying this for weeks.
Yep.
Well, that means you're going to be really light at other positions, linebacker most noticeably, most likely. And you can do some manipulating after the initial 53. You could place a Jomo on IR, for instance, for 4 games. And you can bring a linebacker back. You can sort of play those games. But yeah, I mean, if they're going to keep 7 defensive tackles, I would just say, wow. I mean, they don't want to lose anybody in that instance.
If that's a hill that they've got to climb, and they've got that many defensive, I'd just go linemen, tackles, yes, and edge guys too. They got a minimum of 5 edge guys, I would tend to think. So that's 11 defensive line. How the hell can you carry 11 defensive
If you keep
linemen?
5 and 7, that's 12. And
they can't keep 7. 6 would be the max, I would think, on the defensive tackle side.
Well, that means you got to cut Street or a Jomo, and that means you got to cut one of those 2.
Or you could just put a Jomo on IR to begin with. Now that takes him out for the entire year, and I'm sure they'd like to have him get a chance to progress, have their hands out rather than basically put him on a shelf for an entire year. But that is a possibility that they could just IR him for the entire
but you got to have documentation to prove it's a season. Like you used to be able to do that. George Allen was famous for doing that for old school football fans with the old Redskins.
What are we talking about here, John? We're talking about a concussion.
Yeah.
What is the NFL most guarded about? If they're going to lean toward cutting a team sometime, what are they going to cut you the most likely? That would be a concussion, because that is the all-important concern for the National Football League.
They also have a structured policy, and it is the all-encompassing concern, but you have all this documentation, serious concussions versus non-serious concussions. Some guys are cleared in 2 days. Some guys are cleared in 2 months. Some guys aren't ready for 6 months, and on and on and on. It is more complicated now to do that. And the second part is you have a young player who you think has an upside and is not, let's be honest, doesn't have a season-ending injury. He's fine. I've seen him. He's completely fine. By putting him on injury, he also can't practice. Right. So you're trying to develop a player and he can't practice. I just don't think that's a route they can go. So they have to make a decision. They can place him on IR, as I said, after the 53, and then they only lose him for 4 games. Right. But I don't think he's a candidate for pre-53.
Okay, I'm saying if they're in a really big roster crunch, and the question is, do we cut him and then attempt to get him through waivers and bring him back and potentially lose him, or just put him aside for the entire year if he has an injury that is enough they can get through? It's a decision they have to make.
By the way, that's an easy one for me, because I'm like, all right, Kentavious Street, good player, NFL player, rotational player, nice knowing you. I'm keeping the young guy. I mean, that's deep on the roster.
I would say the same, but yeah, then why isn't he playing last night?
It's a good question. Maybe he's got an injury that we weren't made aware of. A little bit of a tweak. It's always possible, because that is the one name that I said, That's weird.
Right. And either they mentioned on break because I don't know, but I became aware that he wasn't playing. And I was thinking about him when I'm watching Kayvon Wallace making tackles with 3 minutes to go in the game. And I'm going, Kentavious Street gets deferential treatment, and Kayvon's got to be out there to the last 3 minutes. What do we read into this? Well, we read into this that they're still undecided at safety, John.
Yeah,
They have not made up their mind as to what they're doing other than Reed Blankenship is the man. And everything else seems to be on the table.
Yeah. And I don't think Kayvon is, though. As a starter, he's going to be on the team, but they're going to keep. I think they're going to keep all 5 safeties, barring a trade or obviously. And that includes Terrell Edmonds, Justin Evans, who started last night. They were the 2 starters, Sidney Brown and Kayvon. Yeah, they don't know what they don't know. That they don't, or they're playing the goofy competitive advantage card to the hilt, which I think would be dumb. So I'm going to lean on they don't know. And they're trying to decide between what I would describe as competency, and that would be Terrell Edmonds, versus coverage, and that would be Justin Evans, versus upside, and that would be Sidney Brown. I don't think Kayvon's in the equation to be the starter any longer. But he's so important on special teams, especially without Zach McPherson and Sean Bradley. He's not in danger of not being on the roster. And by the way, with Devin Allen, I know everybody's excited about the kick return and the speed. What he impressed me more as a gunner on punts. That I think that was more important for him, and he admitted that's probably more important for him long term, because he did a really good job as a gunner. Which you could say makes sense because he's fast, but there's more to it. You got a bunch of fast guys in the NFL. Not a lot of them could be good gunners. So there's sort of a, there's something to it as well.
All right, I need to get some internal business straightened out. Fred Johnson, we talked about him either yesterday or the day before, that he was released, but he wasn't released, that it showed up on the cut, but wasn't the memo
he was released.
He was released, but then immediately he signed a new contract, and he did not play last night, correct?
No, he started at left tackle.
Oh, he started, okay.
But and he's made the team. They signed him to a 2-year deal. So, I asked the Eagles, what is the bookkeeping? Why can't you just tack a year on? Why do you have to cut him? Is basically my question. And they gave me a non-answer answer. We got a lot of 1-year players, and they wanted to get the extra year because they like him and what he's done and all that kind of stuff. But it just still didn't answer the question of why did you have to do it the way you did it? And the only answer I got was because of his original contract, we weren't allowed to do it. So I asked Joel Corey, who's sort of my guy when it comes to contracts. He hasn't got back to me. He will. He always does. I'll probably have more clarification on that later today. But I have no idea. Typically, you just tack a year on. But for some reason, with the contract he signed, they couldn't do that, and they had to cut him and sign him to a new 2-year contract. But he's a vested guy, so he didn't have to go through waivers. And they just told him, and they have a good relationship, and they just said, hey, we have to do this, bookkeeping, procedural. So there was no danger of losing him. And that's another thing. Remember that when you get down to the 53, because you can do that with veteran players. They don't have to go through waivers. The Dennis Kellys of the world, who I don't think is going to make the team, but you can do that with him. We're talking about, if you need a roster spot, you can cut Rick Lovato. They've done this in the past, and assemble that initial 53 and just bring him back after, when you put somebody on injured reserve. You can play a lot of those games, and they already did it with Fred Johnson.
And Fred Johnson will be here as an Eagles offensive lineman. Who will the other 52 be? Yeah, we'll talk about it a bunch today and surely on Monday, too, before the Tuesday cut down. But we continue to need to recap this monumentous 27-8-14 loss, 13 loss to the Colts last night. Johnny Mack was down there, as was Scott Grayson, Fox 29 sports director and host of Props and Locks. He joins us next here on Birds 365.